I was once part of a picture-perfect suburban family. The responsible older brother to Megan, I played my role well. Then everything changed when she accused me of something unthinkable. False words that shattered my world and sent me into exile. For 10 years I built a new life from nothing, only to have them suddenly reappear when Megan decided to come clean. They wanted reconciliation. I wanted something else. Before I reveal how my own blood destroyed me and what happened when they wanted back in my life 10 years later, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you have ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal. Growing up in Westfield, Connecticut, I was the quintessential eldest son in our upper-middle-class family. My father, Robert, worked as a senior investment banker, while my mother, Katherine, managed a successful interior design business. From an early age, I understood my place in our family hierarchy. I was expected to excel, achieve, and set an example, and I did. Honor roll every semester, student body president, full scholarship to Cornell University, where I studied pre-law. Megan was different. 5 years younger than me, she arrived into our world like a hurricane, demanding attention from day one. My parents doted on her endlessly. When she threw tantrums, they indulged her. When she struggled academically, they hired the most expensive tutors. When she destroyed a neighbor's property during a teenage rebellion phase, my father paid them off to avoid consequences. The pattern was clear. I was held to impossible standards, while Megan was forgiven everything. Despite this imbalance, I loved my sister. I tutored her in subjects she found difficult. I drove her to soccer practice when our parents were busy. I even helped her prepare for her college applications while I was home on break from my first year of law school. We had our typical sibling disputes, but nothing beyond normal friction. At least that is what I believed at the time. By 22, my life seemed perfectly on track. I had graduated summa cum laude from Cornell and secured a position at Harrington & Phillips, a prestigious law firm in Hartford. I had been dating Jessica for nearly 3 years after meeting in constitutional law class. She was brilliant, beautiful, and understood my drive for success because she shared it. We had just moved in together, and I had purchased an engagement ring planning to propose on our upcoming vacation to Cape Cod. On June 15, 2013, my parents hosted a family dinner to celebrate my first year at the firm. The evening began pleasantly enough. My mother prepared my favorite meal, beef Wellington with roasted vegetables. My father opened an expensive bottle of Cabernet. I chose this moment to share 2 pieces of news: my promotion to junior associate 6 months ahead of schedule, and my intention to propose to Jessica. My parents reacted with measured pride about my career advancement, but seemed genuinely happy about my engagement plans. Jessica beamed beside me as she showed off the ring. The only discordant note was Megan. At 17, she had recently been rejected from several colleges that were her top choices. When attention turned to my news, she became sullen, pushing food around her plate and making cutting remarks under her breath. My mother tried to include her in the conversation. "Megan, sweetheart, are not you excited that your brother is getting married? You will be a bridesmaid, of course." "Whatever," Megan muttered. "I am sure George and his perfect life will be just great." My father shot her a warning look, but quickly moved the conversation toward wedding venues. Later, as Jessica and I were leaving, Megan refused to say goodbye, storming up to her room and slamming the door. I remember Jessica commenting on the drive home, "She will get over it. Teenage jealousy, that is all." 3 weeks later, my life imploded. I was working late preparing documents for a case when my doorbell rang at 11:20 at night. Opening it revealed 2 police officers with grave expressions. They asked to come inside and began asking questions about my relationship with my sister. Confused and increasingly alarmed, I answered truthfully, describing our normal, if somewhat strained, sibling dynamic. Then they delivered the devastating news. Megan had filed a police report claiming years of physical abuse and sexual assault at my hands. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. The allegations were so outlandish, so completely fabricated, that my first reaction was stunned laughter. This had to be some terrible misunderstanding. But the officers remained stone-faced as they continued their questioning. When had I last been alone with my sister? Did I have access to her bedroom at my parents' house? Had there been any physical altercations between us? In shock, I called my parents from the police station, certain they would clear this up immediately. Instead, my father answered with cold fury in his voice. "How could you? All these years under our roof." "She told us everything, George. Everything. Do not call this number again. You are no longer our son." The line went dead. My entire body went numb. The next few weeks passed in a nightmarish blur. Megan had provided detailed, completely fabricated accounts of abuse spanning years. She claimed I had threatened to ruin her future if she ever told anyone. She had given police dates, locations, specific incidents that never happened. The level of calculation was terrifying. Jessica initially stood by me, but her support wavered after Megan called her directly, sobbing and sharing graphic details of assaults that existed only in her imagination. "I want to believe you," Jessica said 3 days later, bags packed by the door. But the thing she knew the details. "I just cannot stay here. I need time." She never came back. The investigation continued for weeks. Though there was no physical evidence to support Megan's claims, the mere allegation was enough to destroy my life. Harrington and Phillips placed me on indefinite leave, citing concerns about the firm's reputation. The partners who had praised my work weeks earlier now avoided eye contact in the hallways as I cleaned out my desk. My parents moved swiftly. They emptied the joint accounts established for me, since childhood accounts containing my graduation money and early savings. They filed a restraining order preventing me from coming within 500 feet of our family home or Megan's school. They told extended family a version of events that painted me as a monster hiding in plain sight. Aunts, uncles, cousins, who had celebrated holidays with me for decades now, blocked my calls and emails. The final blow came when I discovered my parents had hired Stephen Barnett, one of the most aggressive attorneys in the state, to help Megan build a civil case against me. They were not just believing her lies, they were actively working to complete my destruction. With my savings gone and my income suspended, I could barely afford my rent, let alone proper legal representation. Within 2 months of Megan's accusation, I had lost my family, my fiancé, my job, my home, and any hope for the future I had worked toward my entire life. Standing in my half-empty apartment possessions, sold to cover legal fees, I contemplated ending everything. How could I possibly recover from this? Who would ever believe me over the tearful testimony of a teenage girl and her supportive, affluent parents? The answer came from an unexpected source. Professor Thomas Williams, my criminal law professor from Cornell, contacted me after hearing rumors. "I do not know exactly what happened," he said over coffee at a diner. "Far from my former office. But I have taught thousands of students, George. I know character. This does not fit yours." "What is your plan?" I admitted. I had none. No plan. No hope. No future. "Nonsense," he replied firmly. "You have been hit hard, but you are not destroyed unless you choose to be. I have a colleague in Chicago who needs a paralegal. Different state, fresh start. The pay is not great, but it is something. You can stay with me until you get back on your feet." It was the first glimmer of light in weeks of darkness. That night I packed what little remained of my possessions into my car. I left Connecticut without saying goodbye to anyone. As far as I was concerned, George Sullivan was dead. Whoever I would become would rise from these ashes. The drive to Chicago took 17 hours. I stopped only for gas and coffee, pushing through fatigue and despair. Professor Thomas had offered his guest room for a few weeks, until I found my footing, a kindness I could never repay. His modest apartment near the university became my first safe harbor. The paralegal position fell through before I arrived. The firm had done a background check and found news articles about the allegations. Without even meeting me, they retracted the offer. It was my first lesson in what would become a pattern. The accusation was enough. Guilt or innocence was irrelevant in the court of public opinion. With no job prospects in the legal field, I took whatever work I could find. Dishwasher at a diner near the university. Night security guard at a storage facility. Delivery driver for a local pharmacy. Sometimes all three in the same week, snatching a few hours of sleep in my car between shifts. Professor Thomas urged me to stay at his place longer, but I knew I needed to stand on my own. After 6 weeks, I had saved enough for the security deposit on a tiny studio apartment in a rundown building in the South Side. The apartment was barely 400 square feet with peeling linoleum floors and a window that would not fully close. But it was mine, paid for with money I had earned myself. No one could take it from me. The day I moved in, I sat on my second-hand mattress and allowed myself to cry for the first time since leaving Connecticut. Not from despair, but from the small victory of surviving. Survival became my only goal. Each day was a battle against the crushing weight of what I had lost, and the stigma that followed me like a shadow. I legally changed my middle name to my first name, going by Sullivan George in professional settings, to avoid immediate connections to my past. I cut off all social media and created new email addresses. I grew a beard, changed my hairstyle, altered my wardrobe, small defenses against being recognized. 6 months into my exile, I found a position at a small business supply company owned by Daniel Martinez. The job description was vague general assistant. It turned out to include everything from janitorial work to basic bookkeeping. The pay was slightly better than my previous jobs, and more importantly, Daniel did not care about my past. "I need someone who shows up on time and works hard," he said during our brief interview. "The rest is not my business." Daniel became my first friend in Chicago. Never prying, but always willing to listen on the rare occasions I shared fragments of my story. When he discovered I had a background in law, he began asking for help with contracts and vendor agreements. Slowly, my role evolved from cleaning bathrooms to managing office operations. By my second year at Martinez Office Supply, I had moved into a slightly better apartment and established a routine that resembled normal life. But normalcy was a veneer over deep wounds. Holidays were particularly brutal. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays all passed without acknowledgement from the family that had raised me. I began working double shifts during these periods, volunteering to cover for coworkers with families. Better to exhaust myself with work than sit alone with memories. Throughout this time, I maintained meticulous documentation of everything related to Megan's accusations. Every legal document, every email, every news clipping went into a secure cloud storage account. I did not know if I would ever use this archive, but preserving the truth became almost a spiritual practice. When everything has been taken from you, facts become sacred. In my third year of exile, I began seeing Dr. Harrison, a therapist, specializing in trauma recovery. Our weekly sessions were often the only times I spoke about my past. "What happened to you was a profound injustice," she said during our first meeting, "but injustice does not define you unless you allow it to." Through therapy, I began to understand that my hypervigilance, insomnia, and trust issues were natural responses to trauma. Dr. Harrison helped me develop tools to manage these symptoms without letting them control my life. Most importantly, she helped me see that isolation, while protective, was slowly killing my spirit. "Humans need connection," she explained. "You have survived, George. Now it is time to consider living again." Taking this advice required tremendous courage. My first attempts at socializing were awkward and anxiety-provoking. A book club at the local library, volunteering at a community garden, small steps toward rejoining the world. Each new acquaintance presented a dilemma. How much of my past do I share? When do I reveal the accusations that had defined me? Most potential friendships ended when people inevitably searched my name online. Then I met Sarah. She was coordinating a legal aid clinic where I had started volunteering, helping with administrative tasks. She was bright, passionate about social justice, and had a laugh that made everyone around her smile. For months, I kept our interactions strictly professional, convinced someone like her would never want someone with my baggage in her life. Sarah persisted, inviting me for coffee after shifts, asking thoughtful questions without pushing when I deflected. Eventually, after nearly 6 months of friendship, I took the terrifying step of telling her everything. We sat in her apartment as I recounted the accusations, the abandonment, the years of rebuilding. I waited for the familiar look of doubt to cloud her eyes. Instead, she reached for my hand. "I have worked with enough survivors and accusers to develop good instincts," she said. "I believe you, George, and I am so sorry this happened to you." Her words cracked something open inside me. The simple act of being believed without question was a gift I had not received since Professor Thomas. Our relationship deepened, gradually built on a foundation of hard-earned trust. Sarah became my partner in healing, my witness to both struggles and achievements. With Sarah's encouragement, I enrolled in night classes to earn my paralegal certification. During days, I continued working for Daniel, who had promoted me to operations manager. My legal knowledge helped him expand his business, negotiating favorable contracts with suppliers and streamlining office procedures. I was not practicing law, but I was using my education in productive ways. 5 years after leaving Connecticut, I had established a new life. Sarah and I moved in together. I had a small but growing network of friends. I had saved enough to start my own legal consulting business, offering services to small business owners who could not afford traditional law firms. I specialized in contract review and compliance issues, careful to never present myself as an attorney. Throughout these years of rebuilding, I occasionally searched for information about my family. Social media and local news websites provided glimpses. My father expanded his investment firm. My mother won awards for her design work. Megan graduated from a state university and took a marketing position at a cosmetics company. Their lives continued undisturbed by the devastation they had caused. Sarah and I married in a small ceremony by Lake Michigan. Her family embraced me warmly, though I shared only a sanitized version of my estrangement from my own relatives. We bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. 2 years later, our daughter Emma was born, bringing a joy I never thought possible after what I had endured. Holding her, I made silent promises to protect her from the kind of betrayal I had experienced, to always listen and believe her. My business thrived through word of mouth. Clients appreciated my thoroughness and integrity. I built professional relationships with attorneys who would handle cases beyond my scope. One such attorney, Michael Reeves, became both a colleague and close friend. Over beers one evening, I finally shared my full story with him. "The statute of limitations has not expired," he noted. "You could potentially pursue a defamation case with the evidence you have collected." I considered this possibility, but ultimately decided against it. Engaging with them would mean inviting them back into my life. "I have built something good here, something they cannot touch." Michael nodded. "I respect that, but keep your documentation secure. You never know when you might need it." His words proved prophetic, sooner than either of us anticipated. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning in April 2023, nearly 10 years after I had left Connecticut. The subject line read simply, "From your mother." I stared at it for several minutes before finding the courage to open it. "Dear George, it has been too long since we have spoken, and that is our fault. Something has happened that you need to know. Megan has confessed that her accusations against you were false. She says she made everything up out of jealousy and spite, and she cannot live with the guilt anymore. We were wrong to believe her without question, wrong to turn our backs on you. We hope you can find it in your heart to forgive us. Your father and I would like to see you to apologize in person. Please respond when you are ready. Love, Mom." The room seemed to spin around me. 10 years of exile. 10 years of rebuilding my life from nothing. 10 years of therapy to manage the trauma of being falsely accused by my own sister and abandoned by my parents. And now, a brief email expecting forgiveness. I had a panic attack for the first time in years. Sarah found me on the bathroom floor, hyperventilating. She held me until my breathing steadied, then read the email herself. "Those selfish, entitled people," she whispered, anger coloring her usually calm voice. "They think they can just waltz back into your life with an email." After the initial shock subsided, cold anger replaced panic. I forwarded the email to Michael for legal advice, then spent the night researching my family. There had to be a reason for this sudden desire for reconciliation. People do not simply develop a conscience after a decade of indifference. What I discovered was revealing. My father's investment firm had weathered several scandals, losing major clients. My mother had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer the previous year. And Megan. She was engaged to Andrew Prescott, heir to a shipping fortune and member of an old-money Boston family known for their conservative values and emphasis on family cohesion. The picture became clearer. Megan wanted to start her new life with a clean slate. My parents, facing health and financial challenges, suddenly remembered they had a successful son who might provide support. This was not about remorse. It was about convenience. I consulted with Dr. Harrison about how to proceed. "What do you want from this potential reconnection, George?" she asked. "Vindication, apology, relationship, or is it closure you are seeking?" The question resonated. What did I want? For years I had fantasized about the day my innocence would be acknowledged. But now, faced with the reality, I realized simple acknowledgement was insufficient. They had watched me lose everything. They had actively participated in my destruction. An apology could not restore what I had lost. After careful consideration and discussions with Sarah and Michael, I decided on a strategic approach. I would engage with my family, but on my terms. I replied to my mother's email with a brief, neutral message: "I am willing to meet. Public place." "No, Megan," initially. The response came within minutes, eagerly accepting my conditions and suggesting dates. We arranged to meet at a restaurant halfway between Chicago and Connecticut. I prepared meticulously for this meeting, reviewing the documentation I had maintained over the years and rehearsing what I would say with both Sarah and Michael. On the day of the meeting, Sarah drove with me for moral support, though she agreed to wait in a coffee shop nearby. "Remember," she said, squeezing my hand before I exited the car, "you are not the one who needs forgiveness here." My parents looked older, of course. My father's confident posture was diminished, his hair now fully gray. My mother appeared fragile, the effects of her cancer treatment evident in her thinned frame. They stood awkwardly when I approached their table, my mother moving as if to hug me before reading my body language and stopping herself. "George," my father began, his voice thick. "Thank you for coming." I nodded but said nothing, taking my seat and waiting. They exchanged glances before launching into clearly rehearsed apologies. They expressed regret for believing Megan without question. They lamented the lost years. They emphasized how Megan had manipulated them with her tears and detailed accusations. "We should have known better," my mother said, dabbing at her eyes. "You were always such a good son." The conversation continued in this vein for nearly 30 minutes. They spoke of healing, of rebuilding our family, of putting the past behind us. Not once did they acknowledge the actual harm done. Not once did they mention the active role they played in destroying my life and reputation. It was all about moving forward, conveniently skipping accountability. "Megan is engaged now," my mother mentioned, as if this were casual news rather than information I had already uncovered. "To a wonderful young man from a very good family. She wants to clear the air before starting this new chapter. She has been carrying this guilt for so long." 10 years, I said, breaking my near silence. "She has been carrying it for 10 years, during which time I lost my career, my fiancé, my home, and my family. I lived in my car. I washed dishes and mopped floors. I changed my name to avoid the stigma of her lies." My parents flinched at the edge in my voice. "We know you suffered," my father said carefully. "And we failed you terribly. But Megan was young, troubled. She needs to make amends as part of her healing journey." "Her healing journey," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "And what about my journey?" They had no meaningful answer. Instead, they shifted to what I now understood was their real purpose. They wanted me to attend Megan's engagement party the following month. Andrew's family was traditional, valuing family connections. They wanted to present a united, harmonious family picture. Megan had apparently told Andrew a sanitized version of our estrangement, and they hoped I would corroborate this revised history. "We can put this all behind us," my mother pleaded. "Be a family again." I considered them carefully. These people who had once been the center of my universe now felt like strangers. Yet beneath my detachment, a plan was forming. I agreed to attend the engagement party with conditions Sarah would accompany me. I would meet with Megan beforehand to hear her apology directly, and we would proceed slowly with any reconciliation. They accepted eagerly, relief evident in their expressions. As we parted, my mother attempted another hug. This time I permitted a brief, stiff embrace, noting how she whispered, "My boy has come home." But I had not come home. I had come for resolution. The meeting with Megan occurred a week later at the same restaurant. She had aged well, her youthful beauty maturing into polished elegance. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, engagement ring prominently displayed. She burst into practiced tears upon seeing me launching into a performance of remorse that might have been convincing had I not spent 10 years developing a fine-tuned detector for manipulation. "I was so jealous," she explained between sobs. "You had everything. The perfect career, the perfect girlfriend. Everyone admired you so much." I just snapped. "I never thought it would go so far." "But it did go far," I replied evenly. "And you let it, for a decade." She dabbed carefully at her eyes. I was trapped in my own lie. The longer it went on, the harder it became to take back. "Please, George, I need your forgiveness. Andrew's family is so important to him, so traditional. This engagement party means everything." I asked pointed questions about her sudden attack of conscience. Her answers revealed more holes than substance. Still, I maintained the appearance of cautious reconciliation. I agreed to attend her engagement party and to meet Andrew beforehand. Over the next 3 weeks, I worked with Michael to prepare. We gathered evidence of Megan's pattern of manipulation beyond her accusations against me. We discovered she had made similar, though less serious, false allegations against a college roommate who had outshined her academically. We found social media posts where she had bragged about manipulating situations to her advantage. Most significantly, we made contact with Jessica, my former fiancée. Now married with children in California, she was initially reluctant to revisit the painful past. However, when I explained the situation, she provided a written statement detailing how Megan had called her repeatedly after the accusations, adding new details that contradicted her original story. By the time the engagement party arrived, I was fully prepared. Sarah and I checked into the luxury hotel where the event would be held. We dressed immaculately, presenting the image of success despite the destruction my family had wrought. The preliminary meeting with Andrew went exactly as expected. He was polite, somewhat stiff, clearly briefed to avoid any deep discussion of the past. The engagement party itself was elaborate, held in the hotel's grand ballroom. Andrew's family was indeed traditional, wealthy, and concerned with appearances. I watched as Megan charmed them, playing the role of reformed young woman ready for the responsibilities of marriage into their esteemed family. Midway through the evening, Andrew's father called for toasts. After several predictable speeches from friends and relatives, he turned to me. "And now we would like to hear from the bride's brother, who has traveled so far to be with us tonight." Taking the microphone, I began with warm congratulations and reminiscences of childhood memories, with Megan carefully selected to reveal nothing of our estrangement. The audience relaxed, smiling. My parents beamed, believing their family facade was secure. Before I conclude, I said smoothly, I would like to request a private moment with Andrew and his parents. "A family tradition," I added with a smile. Curious, but unsuspecting, Andrew and his parents followed me to a small adjoining room. Once there, I presented them with a folder containing irrefutable evidence of Megan's false accusations, including her recent admission via email, Jessica's statement, and documentation of her pattern of manipulative behavior. "I believe you deserve to know the true character of the person joining your family," I said quietly. 10 years ago, my sister destroyed my life with false accusations because she was jealous of my success. My parents enabled and supported her despite having raised me for 22 years without incident. They emptied my bank accounts, hired attorneys to pursue me, and cut off all contact. Now that she wants a picture-perfect wedding, they have decided to acknowledge the truth. I will not stop this marriage. That is your decision. But I will not participate in a fraud." Andrew's father read the documents with increasing horror. His mother sat frozen, color draining from her face. Andrew himself appeared shell-shocked, repeatedly, shaking his head as he reviewed the evidence. "This cannot be true," he finally said, though his tone suggested he already knew it was. "Ask her," I replied simply. "Ask her in front of your parents and mine. See how she responds." What followed was precisely the confrontation I had anticipated. Andrew returned to the ballroom and quietly pulled Megan aside, his parents and mine following with confused expressions. In the same private room, he confronted her with what he had learned. Her initial denials crumbled under the weight of evidence. Her tears, once so effective at manipulating those around her, failed to move Andrew's father, who had built a shipping empire on clear-eyed assessment of character. "The engagement is off," Andrew announced, removing the family ring from Megan's finger. "I cannot build a life with someone capable of such deliberate cruelty and deception." My parents attempted desperate damage control, but the Prescott family withdrew from the event, leaving behind whispers and speculation that would inevitably become damaging gossip in their social circles. In the aftermath, Megan's carefully constructed world collapsed. Andrew's family had connections throughout the industry where she worked. The story would spread. Her reputation, unlike mine, would not be destroyed by false accusations, but by the truth of her own actions. My parents confronted me as Sarah and I prepared to leave. "How could you?" my father demanded, his face flushed with anger. "We were trying to heal our family." "No," I corrected him. "You were trying to salvage Megan's advantageous marriage and perhaps secure financial support for yourselves as your business struggles. You have not once acknowledged the actual harm you caused." "We said we were sorry," my mother cried. "Sorry requires accountability," I replied, "and restitution. When you are ready for that conversation, you can contact Michael Reeves, my attorney. Until then, do not contact me directly again." As we drove back to Chicago, Sarah reached over to squeeze my hand. "Are you okay?" I considered the question carefully. "I think I will be. For the first time in 10 years, I feel like justice has been served. Not through the courts, but through truth." The aftermath of the engagement party played out over several months. Andrew's family, concerned about their reputation, handled the broken engagement discreetly but firmly. They made it clear in their circles that Megan's character was the issue, effectively shutting her out of the social world she had hoped to enter. My parents, facing both social embarrassment and continuing financial strain, attempted to contact me numerous times. They left voicemails, alternating between anger and pleading. They sent emails ranging from accusatory to desperate. I directed all communication, through Michael maintaining the boundary I had established. Megan lost her marketing position when rumors of her past behavior reached her workplace. According to mutual connections, she moved back into my parents' house, unmarried and unemployed at 27. The golden child had lost her luster, and for the first time faced consequences for her actions. I felt no pleasure in their difficulties. Revenge had never been my primary goal. What I sought was acknowledgement of the truth and protection for others who might fall victim to Megan's manipulations. In exposing her, I had achieved both. 3 months after the engagement party, I agreed to a meeting with my parents, this time with Michael present. They arrived humbled by circumstances and finally ready to listen rather than manage the narrative. "We have had time to truly reflect," my father said, looking older than his 60 years. "We failed you completely, not just by believing Megan, but by our actions afterward. We contributed to destroying your life. There is no adequate apology for that. What do you want from me now?" I asked directly. They exchanged glances. "Honestly, we need help," my mother admitted. "Your father's business is struggling. My medical bills are substantial despite insurance. Megan is. Still, your responsibility," I finished firmly, "not mine." I made my position clear. I would not provide financial support. Instead, I offered to pay for family therapy with a specialist in false accusations and family betrayal. I would participate remotely in initial sessions with the possibility of more direct involvement if progress warranted it. "I have built a good life," I told them. "A life that does not require your presence. I have a wife who stood by me when you did not. I have a daughter who will never know the pain of parental betrayal. What I do not have is any obligation to rescue you from circumstances you created." They accepted my terms with resignation. Over the following months, they participated in therapy, beginning the long process of understanding the true depth of their failure. Megan initially refused to join, but eventually relented under pressure from our parents. Meanwhile, I channeled my experience into creating a foundation for those falsely accused of crimes. Working with Michael and other attorneys, we provided resources, legal guidance, and emotional support to people facing situations similar to what I had endured. We advocated for due process reforms and education about the devastating impact of false allegations. This work proved healing in ways I had not anticipated. Each person we helped reinforced that my experience, while painful, had created something valuable. My suffering had purpose. My story had meaning. Sarah and I welcomed our second child, a son we named Thomas, after the professor who had believed in me when no one else did. Our family expanded to include close friends who had stood by us, creating the supportive network I had lost years before. My consulting business continued to thrive with a particular specialty in helping small businesses navigate complex legal challenges. I never returned to the traditional legal career path I had once envisioned, but found greater satisfaction in my current work than I likely would have in corporate law. 1 year after the engagement party confrontation, I agreed to meet with my parents without intermediaries. We met at a park near my home neutral territory, where Emma could play while we talked. Watching my mother tentatively interact with the granddaughter she was meeting for the first time, I felt the sharp edge of my anger finally beginning to dull. "We do not expect to simply become a normal family again," my father said as we watched Emma on the swings. "We know too much has happened, but we are grateful for any relationship you are willing to allow." "I forgive you," I said after a long silence. "Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger takes energy I would rather direct elsewhere. I will maintain appropriate boundaries, but I will not actively exclude you from my life." It was not a Hollywood reconciliation. There were no tearful embraces or declarations of unconditional love. It was a measured adult resolution to a profound breach of trust. A recognition that healing does not require forgetting, and that forgiveness does not erase consequences. As for Megan, our relationship remained more distant. She eventually found work at a smaller company, moved into her own apartment, and began the process of rebuilding her life, much as I had once done. During rare family gatherings, we maintained civil but limited interaction. Some bridges once burned cannot be fully reconstructed. The most profound lesson from my 10-year journey was the power of truth. Not as a weapon, though it can function that way, but as a foundation. When everything else is stripped away, when family, career, home, and reputation are lost, the truth remains. Building a life on that foundation, however painful, creates something genuine and unshakable. Have you ever had to stand up for your truth against those who should have believed you first? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story of rebuilding after betrayal resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the one we are born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your truth is worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes.